Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. The other day I posted a video showing how I painted my Death Guard Plague Marines for Blackstone Fortress No Respite, and now I'm going to show you how I went about doing the Poxwalkers. When I did the Death Guard, I had this idea of they were being infested by the Blackstone Fortress as much as they were infesting the Blackstone Fortress, and I put that into their colour scheme. With the Poxwalkers, what I wanted to do several things. First of all, I wanted it so that they were quite a contrast to the Death Guard. This worked out relatively easy to do because where I did very dark armour for the Death Guard, for the Poxwalkers, I just kept everything very pale, very neutral. I kind of almost wanted these to look like, almost like ghosts, completely leached of colour. They have a little bit of the Nurgle green and the rot and the disease in them, but they're very pale. Even the clothes that they're wearing I wanted to look almost like an old skin that was gradually peeling away from them to reveal their new form underneath. So they're like a ghost of their former selves, shedding their former identity. So I didn't want to have any bright colours on them. Normally you would maybe do like some bright red trousers or something just to give them a pop of colour, but I wanted them to be very neutral, which is always a bit of a risk because if you don't have like a pop colour then sometimes your miniatures can look a little bit dull, but this is what I was going for. The fluff for the Blackstone Fortress Death Guard is that they've hopped around the galaxy taking over Imperial vessels, gradually incorporating those forces into their army. So I kind of wanted the Poxwalkers to look like they were civvies, they were the engineers from other ships, and I wanted them all to look like they were wearing the scrappy remnants of utilitarian overalls and things like that. Think the jumpsuits that were worn in Alien. That was the kind of vibe that I wanted to give them. I wanted to give them this. They were the civvies, they were the mechanics, they were the people unfortunate enough to get in the way and not have the will to resist what has happened to them. So with that preamble out of the way, let's get into actually how I went about doing this. And you can see whether you think I was at all successful in my aims. So we started with a base of Corax White, and then I immediately went with Rakarth Flesh, and I painted that over the horns, and I also painted it over all of these scrappy clothing. So if they were wearing trousers, they got it on their trousers. If they were wearing loincloths, they got it on their loincloths. And if they're wearing boots, or in the case of this particular gentleman, a single boot, the boots as well. So everything got that same Rakarth Flesh base coat. I then used tanned flesh. I used tanned flesh on this first miniature as a test, and then I actually switched to Cadian Fleshtone. And this was for any straps, because I wanted all of the clothes to be in that same realm of having like a skin tone. We then go to Leadbelcher, and obviously we're applying this to any chainmail elements. Leadbelcher is a good dark metal colour which works well for these grimy paint schemes. So I'm going to put this on the chainmail. I'm also going to put it on any metal on the weapons. So this makeshift club that this chap has gets a coat of that as well. And also any little details if they've got little hanging elements or belt buckles. We're then going to Reikland Fleshshade, and everything's really going to get a coat of this except for the metal areas. Everything else is going to get a good coat of this. It's going over the Rakarth Flesh, and it's also going over the Corax White, and it's going to unify those two colours and also give us that pale fleshy base tone. I'm going to use Nuln Oil now, and obviously that's going to go onto the metal areas to define the shade on those, darken them down, bring out those details. So it's going on the chainmail and the weapon, and obviously that little belt buckle as well. I'm then going to Athonian Camoshade, and we're going to add some mottling to the skin here. So I'm going to paint this over the boils. I'm also going to paint it on some of the recessed areas. I'm going to paint it around the eyes. I'm going to put a lot into the eye sockets because that's going to work well with what I'm doing with the eyes later on. Around areas of where the skin is next to clothing and things like that. We then switch to Seraphim Sepia, and I'm doing two things with this. I'm applying it to the bottom of things like the loincloths and the boots, and I'm also going to paint it into recesses in the skin and add more mottling, a different tone in the skin, so it looks blotchy and diseased. We're then going to Agrax Earthshade, so lots of shades again. And we're applying a little bit of that to the bottom of the loincloths and the boots and the trousers to make them look dirty and weathered and rotting and generally not pleasant. I'm also going to drop a little bit of it onto the chainmail in certain patches, and a little bit will be going onto the club as well to make it look a little bit rusty and dirty. I'm then going to get some Corax White. I'm going to thin it down so I've got a lot of control over it, and I'm going to dot in the eyes, and I'm also going to pick out the teeth. So being very careful here because I don't want to get anything on any of the areas that are already done. I'm then going to Casandora Yellow, and this is another thing that I'm going to do to unify these forces with my Death Guard. I'm going to give them the bright yellow eyes. And with the green recess and then the white and then the yellow, you get quite a glowing, staring look, which is quite unsettling. And that's actually a done deal. That's the finished miniature. All I'm going to do now is I'll base them up the way I always do for these guys. So it'll be Mechanicus Standard Grey and then Astrogranite over the top of that. Then a dry brush of Ulthuan Grey, and then around the base will be Abaddon Black, and that will be a finished thing. And this is an incredibly quick paint scheme. It's obviously not the best paint scheme in the world, but it is very, very quick. So I think you can maybe spend 15 minutes to half an hour per miniature with the brush in your hand. The rest of the time you're going to be spending waiting for different shades to dry. I like using shades, it's quick, and I'm quite happy with the results. I'm not sure whether I really achieved that sense of them being almost ghost-like. There's quite a lot of greens and browns in them, but I think they look suitably diseased and unpleasant. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please consider pressing the like button. And if you have really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.